Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Today I'm going to take you through my interpretations of what I think is the progression of the automobile, the progression of cars. And as some of you might know, cars have had a pretty big impact in my life. And I'm going to show you as well how cars have had a big impact in your life and how they will continue to have an impact in your life. To take you through this journey,
We'll go to Google.
we'll go to the origin of cars. And first, horses to automated machines. What do I mean by that? It was around 6,000 years ago that mankind first domesticated the horse. And since then, for basically 6,000 years, the horse was the main means of transportation. It was used for everything. But certain geniuses noticed that horses were going to one day outlive their usefulness as a source of transportation. People like Sir Isaac Newton, and Leonardo da Vinci made blueprints and plans for the first automated machines ever. The problem was that at their time they didn't have the resources necessary to create such machines. So it was only until the 1700s that cars were really made, in the late 1700s. Chariots. The first cars that were made were steam-powered engine, internal combustion engine cars, otherwise known as gas or fuel-powered cars, or with an electric battery as well at the time. And there was a big battle for around 100 years from the 1700s to the early 1800s on which type of engine would rule dominant in the market. Fun fact, the first car ever was a steam engine car. This is a picture of it, and the first car ever was the first car ever to crash because they did not build brakes for it, so it stopped by crashing into a wall. But so in between the battle from these three engines, one came to really dominate, and that was the internal combustion engine, thanks to this one man, Henry Ford, and his assembly line. Thanks to the Ford Model T, and because of him, he not only revolutionized the car industry, but he revolutionized the way people worked for decades to come. And we still use the assembly line process nowadays. Thanks to him, cars became cheap, reliable, and most importantly, accessible to everyone. And that was something that was unheard of before. In the first year the Ford Model T came out, that was the year 1908, the car would cost around $960, which was still a pretty hefty price. In just 4 years, the price went down to half at $500, making the car even more accessible to everyone. And it was thanks to him that this brings me to my next point, the automobile today. Society was starting to be built around cars. And thanks to the automobile, we got buses, trucks, trains, powered boats, motorcycles, etc., etc. Here are examples given by dreamstime.com. And like I said, society was built around cars and public transportation. And a perfect example of this, maybe not for public transportation, but how society was built around cars, is Miami. And why is this a perfect example? First of all, wherever you go in Miami, in the Dade County, you have to travel long distances. It's just how it is. There's poor public transportation, pretty much horrendous public transportation compared to New York City, Paris, and other cities like. And Miami is a pretty special city in the sense that there's no central city. We go to FIU, which is in Southwest 8th Street, all the way to the west, right? We head east, we get to downtown Miami. Then we head a bit more east, we get to Miami Beach. Then we go a bit south, and it's Coral Gables. Then you got Kendall, then you got Doral, then you got Hialeah. There's no really central place that dominates the area, like New York City. Everything revolves around New York City. Nothing really revolves around one city here. And that's just Miami-Dade. Broward County has the same amount of cities that are just as important. And because of this, everyone is required to have a car. Who here does not have a car?
Well, like my own?
Well, who does not drive a car?
Oh, okay.
Who does not drive a car here?
Never mind, that's it.
Everyone drives a car, whether it's their relatives or something, right?
Okay, yeah.
I'm taking the bus too. It's okay. And thanks to this, society's infrastructure was built around cars, and it's lovely because this is a great example, the 95 and the express lane. Why? Because yeah, there might be some traffic, but in Colombia, where I was born, in the city of Bogota, the distance that I travel from my house to here to come to FIU is 30 miles. For me to travel that same distance in the traffic over there will take me from 1 to 2 hours depending on the day. Plus, since there are so many cars in the street and there's not enough roads, they make laws so that certain cars cannot go throughout the week. So every plate has to end in a number. So the cars with plate numbers 0 and 1 cannot go out Mondays and Wednesdays. The plate numbers 2 and 3 cannot go out Tuesdays and Thursdays. Can you imagine that? So even though 95 is pretty hectic, I love it. And so many people have cars. Cars have evolved and taken a form that's not just a means of transportation. Cars are a culture in itself, or as a culture, right? And my first example to this would be the racing car industry. For those of you that don't know, I'm a professional go-kart driver, and I've loved cars my whole life. This car right here, the Nissan GTR, is the example of my dream car in the racing industry. Just NASCAR in itself produced more than $3.1 billion in revenue last year and $2.8 billion of revenue 2 years ago. That's just NASCAR. You got Formula One, you got IndyCar, you got rally, you got prototypes, you got go-karts, etc. Huge industry. But not everyone is aroused by the sound of loud, roaring V8s and fast speeds and tight corners. But instead, they use cars as a statement. And my example to this would be the Fiat 500. Why? When you see this car, do you think of speed or power? All right. When I see this car personally, I think of Italy, class, elegance, finesse. And when you get the higher end models, such as the Gucci edition or the Ferrari edition, that just gives you, a bit more of a statement than your usual average Honda Civic or Toyota Corolla. And people have gotten, I guess, the idea that you can customize technically everything. So people started customizing cars as their own way to make a statement, and this can get pretty exaggerated. I myself am not very fond of this type of exaggerations, but if you would like to see cars like this, you can go to Echeverry at night. Feel free. It's pretty awesome to go once in a while. And this brings me to my next point. Cars in the future. Lately, there has been a trend just of, I guess, a bit of everything, that we need to be healthy for our own selves, healthy for the environment, to go green, right? So what has this brought for the cars? Hybrid and electric powered cars. The first example is the Hyundai Sonata Hybrid. I used to drive this car. It was a genuinely great car. I can go from here to Atlanta in one tank, here Orlando, back Orlando in one tank. Has 200 horsepower, decent speed. I have to have some speed. I can't go up a crazy. But this is a car that's powered by both gas and an electric battery. The future that we're seeing is electric powered cars, solely electric powered, but I should have put, instead of that Subaru R1E, a Tesla. And why? Because Tesla has the potential to make that same revolution that Ford did back when he introduced his first cars. What I mean by this was that Ford made cars accessible to everyone. Tesla, in the near future, and companies like Tesla have the potential to give electric cars, reliable electric cars, to the mass populations. And this is astonishing. And the electric cars have been in such a hype that even BMW came out with an electric supercar, the BMW i8, one of the most beautiful looking cars I've ever seen, super expensive, needless to say, one of my dream cars. And this brings us to the question, is it the end of petrol, of gasoline, of fuel? Will companies like Tesla bring new innovations, and now with other type of energy sources, hydrogen power, natural gas, electricity, even water? It reminds me of how cars were originally made, and there was the struggle between the three engine types, right? Steam powered, electric, and gas. Now it's technically between electric and gas-powered cars. We see that struggle between Tesla and, I guess, everyone else. And this brings me to my conclusion, which would be two open-ended questions. The first one, like I was pointing to it, can we break the status quo of the gas industries? Not just in the car industry, but in the energy industry as a whole. For the past 150 years, energy companies have been dominated by petrol and oil. Can the new technologies that are becoming more efficient and more reliable overtake them? And in the sense of the car, will cars outlive their usefulness by the invention of new ways to transport ourselves? What I mean by this is that horses were used as a means of transportation for 6,000 years. We've only technically had cars, good reliable cars, for 100 years. How much longer will we use cars until, I don't know, we can transport ourselves or something else that's probably not ourselves, but our children and our grandchildren will see? And those are the two questions I leave you today. Thank you very much.